Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your gateway to uncovering hidden insights and illuminating mysteries. I'm thrilled you've joined our global community. Whether you're watching from a bustling city skyline or a quiet countryside, we're glad you're here. Globe showing Europe, Africa, so tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Chapter 1, The Invitation to Wynthorpe. The autumn wind blew cold across London, carrying with it the scent of rain and wet pavements. Hercule Poirot, seated neatly at his breakfast table in Whitehaven Mansions, regarded the grey morning with mild disapproval. His toast was perfectly browned, his eggs timed to the precise minute, yet something was missing. Life, as he would have said, lacked le petit intérêt. That was when the letter arrived. It was delivered not by the morning post but by a private courier in a dark overcoat, who insisted on placing the sealed envelope directly into Poirot's hand. The handwriting was heavy and angular, the kind that suggested an impatient temperament. Upon the thick cream paper, embossed in faded gold, were the words, "Wynthorpe Grange, Norfolk." Poirot slit the envelope with a paper knife, and his keen eyes scanned the contents. "Monsieur Poirot, I write to you in great distress. Strange and alarming occurrences have disturbed the peace of my household. My family is divided, my servants uneasy, and I myself am beset by threats most unnatural. I implore you to come to Wynthorpe Grange at once, before matters take a darker turn. Your discretion and genius are my only hope. Yours faithfully, Sir Adrian Langford." Poirot lifted one eyebrow. "Tiens. A summons from Norfolk, and one most urgent, it seems. Threats unnatural. I wonder, Hastings, if that means something supernatural, or merely melodramatic." Captain Hastings, who was perusing the newspaper opposite, looked up. "Langford? The name rings a bell. Wasn't he some sort of manufacturer?" "Indeed, mon ami. Sir Adrian Langford, once called the Iron King of Norfolk, an empire of machinery, I think. He is a man accustomed to power." Poirot smiled faintly. "And men of power often make enemies. It will be interesting. Do you mean to go?" Poirot folded the letter precisely. When a man writes of darkness and dread with trembling hands, it is not for Hercule Poirot to refuse. "Pack your bag, Hastings, we go to the country." The following afternoon, the two men alighted at a small, lonely station surrounded by fields and shrouded in mist. A chauffeur awaited them, tall, unsmiling, and wrapped in a heavy coat. He introduced himself as Matthews, the butler, sent with the motor car from the Grange. As they drove through the winding lanes, the countryside seemed to darken. The trees stood close, their bare branches forming arches like the ribs of some vast cathedral. The sound of the engine echoed dully in the damp air. "Cheerful place," Hastings muttered. "Do you suppose these people ever see the sun?" Poirot adjusted his hat. "Nature, my friend, often reflects the mood of those who dwell within her. I fear we shall find the household of Sir Adrian as sombre as this landscape." At last, the trees parted, and Wynthorpe Grange came into view, a grand but weary mansion of grey stone, standing upon a rise. Its many chimneys belched faint wisps of smoke, and its windows stared out like blind eyes. Poirot alighted with brisk elegance, brushing a speck of dust from his sleeve. "Eh bien, Hastings, we have arrived. Observe the symmetry, that is the work of an architect of taste. Yet see how the ivy creeps up the east wing? It suggests neglect, perhaps decay. Even the grandest facade cannot hide unease." Inside, the house was vast, filled with portraits and heavy furniture. The air smelled faintly of lavender and smoke. They were led into a long drawing room, where a fire burned low. There, an elderly man rose to greet them. Sir Adrian Langford was tall and imposing, his silver hair brushed back from a lined forehead. His dark eyes were sharp, though clouded with anxiety. He leaned heavily on a cane, and when he spoke, his voice carried both authority and exhaustion. Monsieur Poirot, I am deeply grateful you came. Poirot bowed slightly. The gratitude will be mine, Sir Adrian, if I can be of service. You wrote of, how did you phrase it, threats most unnatural. Perhaps you will enlighten me. Sir Adrian glanced toward the closed door before replying. Yes. You must understand, Monsieur Poirot, that my family has lived here for generations. Wynthorpe is not a happy house. Old wrongs linger, and old greed festers. He gestured toward the portrait above the mantel, a woman with pale skin and cold eyes, painted centuries ago. That is Lady Margaret Wynthorpe, my ancestor. She poisoned her husband, or so legend says. They say her spirit walks when there is betrayal in the house. Poirot inclined his head politely. You speak of superstition, perhaps? Sir Adrian gave a dry laugh. Superstition, yes, and yet, these past weeks, there have been occurrences I cannot explain. Locked doors found open. Footsteps where no one walks. A letter placed on my desk warning me that I shall join the ghosts of Wynthorpe before the month is out. Hastings whistled softly. Good Lord! Sir Adrian continued, I have a wife, Lady Clarissa, much younger than I, and delicate of health. My son, Edmund, by my first marriage, is here too. And my physician, Dr. Carraway, who refuses to admit there is anything amiss. But I tell you, Poirot, there is evil in this house. I feel it. Poirot studied him keenly. And you fear for your life. Sir Adrian's hand trembled slightly as he poured himself a drink. I do. I have enemies even under this roof. My fortune, my will, such things breed hatred. I have changed it recently, and since that day, the whispering has not ceased. Poirot's gaze lingered on the decanter. You drink whiskey, Sir Adrian. Yet the glass is clean, freshly polished. That speaks of a man who trusts no one to prepare it for him. The old man smiled grimly. You are observant, Monsieur Poirot. It is my business. Poirot's eyes twinkled briefly. Tell me, when did these disturbances begin? About 3 weeks ago, Sir Adrian replied. The night after the portrait of Lady Margaret was restored. It was taken down for cleaning, and since its return, the servants swear they hear her whisper in the dark. Foolishness, of course. And yet... He broke off, staring into the fire. The flames danced in his eyes, reflecting something between fear and defiance. Poirot leaned forward. You are troubled, Sir Adrian. You speak of danger, of hatred, yet I sense pride also. You would not easily admit to fear. The old man gave a weary sigh. You are right. I have faced rivals, strikes, even scandal. But this unseen menace, wears a man down. I am glad you are here, Poirot. Perhaps you will uncover the truth before it is too late. There was a silence, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Somewhere in the corridor, a door creaked. A faint draught stirred the curtains. Poirot rose smoothly. I shall do my utmost, Sir Adrian. Evil, whether of the human heart or of the spirit, leaves always its little traces. I shall find them. As he and Hastings were shown to their rooms, the long corridor stretched before them, lined with portraits whose painted eyes followed their steps. Hastings shivered slightly. Creepy place, he muttered. I don't like the look of that woman in the portrait. Almost alive, isn't she? Poirot smiled faintly. Alive, perhaps, in memory. But it is not the dead we must fear, Hastings. It is the living. He paused before entering his room. Mark my words, mon ami, before we leave Wynthorpe Grange, there will be tragedy. Chapter 2, the dinner of shadows. The day following Poirot's arrival at Wynthorpe Grange passed in uneasy quiet. A damp mist clung to the lawns, and the great house seemed half asleep, its rooms hushed, its corridors echoing faintly with every footstep. Even the servants moved softly, as though fearful of awakening something best left undisturbed. Poirot spent much of the morning acquainting himself with the household. He met Lady Clarissa in the conservatory, a woman of perhaps 30, slender and beautiful, her fair hair drawn back in a loose chignon. Her manner was gentle, but her eyes darted nervously from window to window, as though expecting an unseen watcher. "I do not know what has come over my husband," she murmured. "He grows more suspicious by the day. He thinks someone in this house means him harm. It is dreadful." "You are anxious for him, madam?" Poirot asked gently. "I am frightened," she confessed. "Frightened of what he might do if this madness continues, or what it might drive someone else to do." Poirot bowed his head slightly, filing away her words. Later, he encountered Dr. Lionel Carroway, the family physician, a tall man with steady eyes and an assured voice. His tone was courteous but faintly dismissive when Poirot mentioned Sir Adrian's fears. "Hallucinations brought on by fatigue," he said briskly. "The old man's health is not what it was. Isolation breeds fancies." Poirot gave him one of his small, enigmatic smiles. "You do not believe in ghosts, Doctor?" "I believe in overworked nerves and too much brandy," Dr. Carroway replied. "If you want my advice, Monsieur Poirot, convince Sir Adrian to rest and to keep away from that wretched gallery of his." "Ah," Poirot murmured, "the gallery, where hangs the portrait of Lady Margaret?" The doctor's eyes flickered, just for an instant. "Yes. He spends hours there at night. It's unhealthy." Poirot noted that flicker. By evening, the household gathered for dinner. The long oak table gleamed under the chandelier's glow, and silverware shone like captured stars. Yet beneath the civility lay tension sharp enough to taste. Sir Adrian presided at the head, his manner commanding but irritable. To his right sat Lady Clarissa, pale and withdrawn. Edmund Langford lounged opposite her, his expression mocking, his wine glass perpetually half full. Dr. Carroway and Miss Violet Dane completed the company, with Poirot and Hastings seated as guests of honour. The meal began pleasantly enough. Soup was served, conversation polite. Poirot, ever observant, noticed small things, Lady Clarissa's trembling hands, Edmund's sardonic glances toward her, Dr. Carroway's calm but watchful silence. Sir Adrian drank little, but his eyes were bright with some private fury. It was during the main course that the tension broke. "Edmund," Sir Adrian said suddenly, his voice hard, "I've received word from my solicitor. I trust you're aware of the new arrangement regarding the estate." Edmund looked up sharply. "You mean the new will?" "Oh yes, I've heard. The servants talk, you know." "Then you know that your allowance will cease," Sir Adrian said, his eyes flashing. "You've squandered enough. Wynthorpe is not a purse for your gambling debts." Edmund's fork clattered onto his plate. "You're cutting me off entirely, then? After all these years?" "I am," said Sir Adrian coldly. "I've had enough of leeches, in business and in family alike." For a moment, no one breathed. Then Edmund gave a short, mirthless laugh. "Well, I dare say you'll regret it sooner than you think." Lady Clarissa gasped. "Edmund, please." But Edmund only rose from the table, his chair scraping harshly on the floor. "I've lost my appetite," he said, and strode out, the door slamming behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Sir Adrian's face was white with anger. "Ungrateful wretch," he muttered. Then, regaining control, he forced a thin smile. "Forgive the scene, Monsieur Poirot. Family matters are best left buried, like our ancestors." Poirot inclined his head slightly. Alas, Sir Adrian, family matters seldom remain buried. When the meal ended, the ladies withdrew to the drawing-room, leaving the men with brandy and cigars. Poirot, however, declined both. He rose. "I think I shall take a little walk through your gallery, Sir Adrian. The architecture interests me." Sir Adrian's eyes flickered with surprise. "You wish to see the portrait?" "If I may." The old man hesitated. Then, with a strange look, he handed Poirot a small key from his waistcoat pocket. "Very well. You'll find the gallery at the end of the west corridor. But be warned, some say she doesn't like to be disturbed." Poirot smiled faintly. "Mais non, ghosts and I are old friends." He slipped the key into his pocket and left the dining room, Hastings following at a discreet distance. The gallery was long and dimly lit, its walls lined with portraits that stared down from centuries past. The great painting of Lady Margaret Wynthorpe dominated the far end, her pale face luminous even in the gloom, her eyes dark and knowing. Poirot stood before her, hands clasped behind his back. "So, madam," he murmured softly, "you who were called poisoner, do you still guard your secrets, Hein?" A floorboard creaked. Poirot turned, but the corridor behind him was empty. Only the whisper of wind stirred through the narrow windows. He examined the locks, the carpet, the placement of the furniture. Nothing appeared amiss, save for a faint scent of roses in the air. Odd, for the gallery held no flowers. When he returned to his room, the house was still. Hastings was half asleep in his chair. "Nothing to see," Hastings murmured. "Eerie place, though." Poirot nodded slowly. "Yes, mon ami. But the night is not yet over." It was just past 11 when the scream came. A single, piercing cry, high, terrible, and abruptly cut short. Then silence. Doors opened. Footsteps thundered through the corridors. Poirot and Hastings were among the first to reach the gallery. The heavy door stood closed, locked from within. A faint light flickered under the crack. Sir Adrian's voice did not answer their calls. "Stand back," Hastings said, and together with the butler Matthews, they forced the door. The lock splintered, and the panel swung inward with a groan. What they saw froze them where they stood. Sir Adrian Langford sat upright in the armchair beneath the portrait, but the life was gone from him. His body was rigid, his face twisted in horror. The decanter from the dining room lay shattered on the carpet beside him, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of spirits and glass dust. Poirot stepped forward, his expression grave. He bent close, then drew back sharply. In the dead man's open mouth glittered shards of broken glass. The fragments had been forced between his lips, his tongue blooded where he had tried to cry out. His hands were clenched tight around the arms of the chair, and on his right cuff was a faint smear, as though from a woman's powdered hand. Hastings swallowed hard. Good Lord, who could do such a thing? Poirot's eye swept the room, the overturned chair, the faint scuff mark on the floor, the stopped clock upon the mantel reading 9:17. He murmured softly, "The murderer, Hastings, has a flair for the dramatic. He wished not only to kill, but to make a spectacle. It is too neat, too deliberate. And that, mon ami, is always of interest." He turned once more toward the portrait of Lady Margaret. The painted eye seemed almost to glimmer in the candlelight, as if she watched in silent triumph over the scene of horror below. Poirot bowed his head slightly. "The play, it seems," he said quietly, "has begun." Chapter 3, The Sealed Gallery. The house of Wynthorpe awoke that morning to dread. A pall hung over the corridors, servants whispered behind doors, and even the clatter of breakfast china seemed indecently loud. Death had come to the Grange, and not the quiet, natural kind. Sir Adrian Langford, master of the estate, had met an end so grotesque, so deliberate in its cruelty that few could speak of it without shuddering. By mid-morning, the local constabulary had arrived, led by Inspector Hewitt, a solid, fair-haired man with an expression of earnest perplexity. He greeted Poirot with a firm handshake and a wary glance. "Most irregular business, Monsieur Poirot. Locked from the inside, key still in the lock, windows barred. And that poor devil with glass in his mouth, I've never seen the like." Poirot inclined his head gravely. "It is not a crime of impulse, Inspector. It is, how shall I say, a murder arranged with precision, with artistry. Someone has taken trouble to compose a tableau." "Tableau, eh?" "Nasty one, if you ask me," said Hewitt, shuddering. "Looks like suicide at first glance, but the doctor's sure he couldn't have done it himself. Too much blood in the mouth, and there's bruising on the jaw. Forced in." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then we agree, it was murder. Let us examine the scene together, if you please." The gallery had been sealed off overnight. When Poirot and the inspector entered, the air was still heavy with the faint scent of spirits and something metallic beneath, the smell of blood mingled with glass dust. Poirot moved slowly, delicately, as though afraid to disturb invisible threads. Every detail caught his gaze, the arrangement of the furniture, the trail of broken glass, the gleam of a dropped cufflink half hidden beneath the armchair. He crouched, retrieving it with a gloved hand. "A trifle, but truffles, my friend, may conceal the key to a feast. Observe, an initial, E. It will belong, perhaps, to Edmund Langford." Inspector Hewitt scribbled in his notebook. "Possible. The son, isn't he?" "Just so." Poirot's eyes travelled to the mantelpiece, where a small clock rested, its hand stopped precisely at 9:17. "Interesting. The scream was heard shortly after 11, and yet this clock ceases to mark the passage of time 2 hours before. Coincidence? None. The murderer wishes us to think it marks the hour of death." "You believe it was tampered with?" "Without doubt." Poirot straightened, his gaze sweeping the walls. "Everything here is arranged to deceive. The murderer wishes us to see drama, horror, the mouth filled with glass, the locked door, the family curse. All is theatre." He crossed to the windows, examining the latches. Secure. Dust undisturbed. The room truly was sealed, unless, he knelt, brushing his fingers along the sill. A faint streak of soot marked the edge. Hewitt peered closer. "What's that, then?" "Not soot, I think. Polish, from a servant's cloth, used perhaps in haste. See, there is a print here, the mark of a thumb, faint but distinct. Yet the servants swear none entered since the cleaning yesterday morning. Someone returned unseen." He moved to the hearth, where ashes lay cool. Among them glimmered a small scrap of paper, half burned. Poirot extracted it carefully with tweezers. Only 2 words remained legible: "My promise." "Curious," he murmured. "A promise, to whom, and of what nature?" Inspector Hewitt frowned. "Could be from any letter." Poirot smiled faintly. "Ah, but no ordinary correspondence ends its lines with such intensity. It is the voice of passion, of fear, perhaps of guilt." They turned next to the key in the lock. It was on the inside of the door, yet when the door had been forced, it had fallen outward, as though lightly balanced rather than properly turned. Poirot studied it for a long moment. "You see, mon ami, it is possible to lock a door from the outside, and leave the key within. All that is required is a thread, or a fine wire, passed through the keyhole. A trick known to criminals and magicians alike." Hewitt scratched his head. "So, whoever did it meant us to think it impossible, a locked room mystery." "Precisely. A theatrical illusion. Our murderer is a dramatist of the highest order." Poirot straightened, his expression grave. Now we must ask, who among the household possesses both intelligence and imagination enough for such an act? When they returned to the drawing room, the household awaited them in strained silence. Lady Clarissa sat near the window, pale as ivory, a handkerchief crumpled in her hand. Beside her, Miss Violet Dane wept softly, while Dr. Carraway stood apart, his posture rigid, his expression guarded. Edmund Langford lounged in an armchair, defiant but uneasy. Poirot regarded them with gentle courtesy. "Messrs, Mesdames, I regret that I must ask questions, though I know it pains you. Truth, however, must be sought, Tuges." He turned first to Edmund. "Monsieur, last night you quitted the dining room in anger." Edmund's jaw tightened. "I did. My father had humiliated me before strangers. I went to the billiard room." "Alone?" "Yes. I played a few games. Then I went upstairs about 10:30. You can ask the footman, he brought me whiskey." Poirot inclined his head. "Indeed, I shall. And this," he held up the cufflink, "belongs to you." Edmund's face flushed. "Yes. I must have dropped it earlier in the day. I was in the gallery yesterday afternoon." "Ah, naturally." Poirot's voice was mild. "You admired the portrait, perhaps?" "I was retrieving a book," Edmund muttered. Poirot let the matter rest. Next, he addressed Lady Clarissa. "Madam, forgive me, but did you retire early last night?" "I did," she whispered. "I had a headache. I took my tonic and went to bed around 10. "Your tonic?" Poirot repeated softly. "It has a faint scent of roses, does it not?" Her eyes widened. "Why, yes, it's flavored so by Dr. Carraway." Poirot's glance flickered toward the physician. "Ah, doctor, you are chemist as well as physician." "Purely for my patient's comfort," Carraway replied smoothly. "The lady dislikes bitterness." Poirot smiled gently. A considerate man indeed. Finally, he turned to Violet Dane. "Mademoiselle, you are companion to Lady Clarissa." "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. "I was reading in my room when I heard the scream." "I swear it." Poirot nodded. "No doubt, no doubt. But tell me, did you see Sir Adrian earlier that evening?" She hesitated. "Only for a moment, in the corridor. He seemed agitated. He said, 'The time is nearly come,' and went toward the gallery." Poirot's eyes glinted. "Très intéressant. Thank you." When the questioning was done, Poirot and Hastings walked alone through the hall. Outside, rain lashed against the windows, thunder rolled far away. Hastings shook his head. "All of them seem suspicious, don't they?" "Indeed," said Poirot softly. "Each has a motive, each an opportunity. But only one has the mind for this curious piece of theatre." He paused by the base of the staircase, gazing up toward the dark corridor that led to the gallery. "The locked room, Hastings, it is not the puzzle of mechanics that interests me. No. It is the psychology." "The psychology?" "Yes. Consider, why the glass? Why the mouth?" Poirot's eyes were distant, thoughtful. Our murderer wished to make a statement. It is not only death he desired, it is humiliation. There is hatred here, cold, deliberate hatred. He turned suddenly, his expression sharp. "We must learn what secret bound these people together, and what promise was burned in that fire. Until then, the ghost of Wynthorpe shall not rest." As they reached the landing, the great clock in the hall struck 12. The sound echoed through the empty corridors, solemn, hollow, and unending. And somewhere far above, in the shuttered gallery, a faint creak answered, as though a footstep moved where no living soul should be. Chapter 4: Whispers and Alibis. The morning after the murder broke cold and silver-grey. A faint drizzle pattered on the tall windows, blurring the view of the gardens beyond. Wynthorpe Grange seemed more oppressive than ever, a house half asleep and half afraid, haunted not by ghosts but by silence. Poirot descended to the breakfast room with immaculate calm. His moustaches were perfectly trimmed, his shoes shone like glass, and not even the storm of the night before had disturbed the symmetry of his attire. Hastings followed, bleary-eyed and muttering about the grim weather. At the table, only Lady Clarissa and Dr. Carraway sat, both pale and quiet. Edmund Langford entered soon after, his manner insolent, yet a shadow lingered behind his confidence. Poirot, noting each detail, the tremor in a hand, the faintest glance exchanged, took his seat as though the morning were ordinary. "Ah, good morning, everyone," he said cheerfully. "It is well to begin the day with civility, even when death has dined with us." Lady Clarissa flinched. "Must we speak of it at breakfast, Monsieur Poirot?" Poirot inclined his head apologetically. "Forgive me, madam. But I find that murder does not wait for the convenience of polite society." He sipped his coffee delicately, then turned to Dr. Carraway. "You were, I believe, the first to examine Sir Adrian's body?" "Yes," the doctor replied quietly. "I was summoned immediately after the door was forced." "And you confirmed death?" "I did. The injuries were consistent with forced ingestion of glass. Whoever did it acted with considerable strength." "Strength, or hatred," murmured Poirot. "A curious choice of weapon, is it not? Not the knife, not the pistol, but glass. There is meaning there. A symbol, perhaps." Dr. Carraway frowned. "A symbol?" Poirot smiled faintly. "In every act of violence, Doctor, there is a kind of poetry, often dark, but precise. Sir Adrian was made to die in the shadow of his ancestor's portrait, with glass forced into his mouth. A death of punishment, of silence. The murderer wished him to choke upon something sharp, something transparent, as though his own words had cut him." The doctor shifted uneasily. "You speak as though the killer were an artist." "Mais oui," Poirot replied softly. "An artist of cruelty." After breakfast, Poirot requested that the household gather once more in the library, a sombre, panelled room smelling faintly of leather and smoke. There, before the great fireplace, he began his quiet interrogation. "Let us reconstruct, if we may," he said. "Each of you will tell me where you were between 9 o'clock and 11 last night. The truth is often found, you see, in the small contradictions of time." Lady Clarissa's account. She spoke in a trembling voice, her hands clasped tightly. "I retired at 10. I had my tonic, Dr. Carraway prepared it himself, and I read for a few minutes before sleeping." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "And you heard nothing?" "Only the rain. I sleep lightly, but I heard no scream until others shouted." "You locked your door?" "Yes," she said, hesitating. "It is an old habit. The house feels uneasy of late." Poirot nodded, filing away each word. "And your tonic, madam, where is the glass now?" "In my room, I think. The maid will have cleared it this morning." Poirot smiled politely. "Merci." Edmund Langford's account. Edmund lounged against the mantel, arms folded. "I told you already, Poirot. I went to the billiard room after dinner, then upstairs about 10:30. I wasn't near the gallery." Poirot examined him coolly. "You played billiards alone, monsieur?" "Yes." "You enjoy solitude?" "I enjoy peace from my father's temper," Edmund snapped. "If you must know, I had no reason to wish him dead. He'd cut me out of his will, but he's done that before. Always changed it back when he wanted me under his thumb. Poirot's gaze was steady. And yet, your cuff-link was found beside his chair. Edmund stiffened. I must have dropped it earlier. I was in the gallery yesterday afternoon. Perhaps, said Poirot mildly. But you are left-handed, are you not? Edmund blinked. Yes, what of it? Poirot gestured delicately. Only this, the glass was crushed predominantly on the left side of the mouth. The one who held him must have used their left hand. For the first time, Edmund faltered. You think I? Poirot lifted a hand. I think nothing yet. But facts, monsieur, are like the pieces of a puzzle. They fit, or they do not. Miss Violet Dane's account. The companion entered shyly, her eyes red from weeping. I was in my room, Monsieur Poirot, reading. I heard the scream and ran out, but the others were already in the corridor. Poirot's tone softened. You were devoted to Sir Adrian. He was kind to me, in his way. But he frightened me sometimes. He had a temper, and he distrusted everyone. Even Lady Clarissa? Violet's gaze flickered toward her mistress before she whispered, he said once that beauty was a dangerous thing to own. That it made men foolish. Poirot regarded her keenly. You have overheard much in this house, mademoiselle. Perhaps you know of any quarrels, or secrets. She hesitated. Only that Sir Adrian once accused Lady Clarissa of lying about her past. He said he had proof, letters, I think. He kept them locked in his study. Ah. Poirot's eyes brightened. Letters. Always the heart of mischief. Thank you. Dr. Carraway's account. The doctor met Poirot's questions with practiced calm. I retired at about 10:30, he said. My room is on the far side of the house. I heard nothing until the commotion. And your relationship with Sir Adrian? Professional. I advised him to rest, to avoid overstrain. He refused. Poirot tapped a finger on his chin. You are a man of science, doctor, yet you know something of chemistry, flavoring tonics, preparing remedies. Of course. Poirot nodded. Then you would recognize, perhaps, that crushed glass, when ground fine enough, might pass unnoticed in a liquid, until swallowed. Carraway's expression darkened. You're suggesting. I suggest nothing, said Poirot mildly. I merely note that Sir Adrian's whiskey glass was suspiciously clean, and his decanter recently polished. For a moment, the doctor's composure cracked. Then he said coolly, you think I'd poison a man I served for 20 years? Poirot gave a little shrug. I think, doctor, that people kill for less, pride, love, or fear. When the questioning ended, the group dispersed, leaving Poirot and Hastings alone amid the stillness of the library. Well? Hastings asked eagerly. Who do you suspect? Poirot smiled faintly. Each of them, mon ami. Each has lied, though only a little. Lady Clarissa spoke too quickly about her tonic. Edmund hides more rage than he admits. Dr. Carraway's calmness is the mask of a troubled conscience. And Miss Dane, that one trembles not with fear, but with guilt. Hastings frowned. Guilt? For what? Poirot leaned closer, his eyes glittering. She said she heard nothing until the commotion, yet the scream was loud enough to wake the entire wing. Why should she lie about so small a thing, unless she heard something else, something she dares not confess? He rose, smoothing his jacket. We must search Sir Adrian's study. The letters, the proof, they will tell us what ghost truly haunted Wynthorpe Grange. They waited until dusk, when the household had withdrawn. Poirot and Hastings entered the study, a dark, book-lined room overlooking the terrace. Poirot's small electric torch flickered over the shelves, the great desk, the portrait of Lady Clarissa on the wall. "Observe," he whispered. "The lock of the desk is new. The screws shine. Recently tampered with." With delicate precision, he slid a thin blade into the drawer. It sprang open with a click. Inside lay a bundle of papers, bound with red ribbon, and atop them, a single sealed envelope marked in bold handwriting. "To be opened only in the event of my death." Poirot regarded it silently, his face unreadable. "Mon Dieu," he said at last. "The dead man leaves us his final clue. Now, Hastings, we shall begin to see the pattern, and it will not be pleasant." He slipped the envelope carefully into his pocket, extinguished the torch, and closed the drawer. Outside, the rain had ceased. But the house remained as still as a tomb. And in that stillness, faintly, almost imperceptibly, a whisper seemed to pass through the air, a sigh from the portrait above the mantel, as though the painted eyes of Lady Clarissa's likeness watched in silent, knowing amusement. Chapter 5. The Secret Beneath the Painting. The night had deepened into a velvet hush. Clouds drifted across the moon, casting pale ribbons of light along the corridors of Wynthorpe Grange. The entire household had retired, or so it seemed. Yet in the study, two figures lingered, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings, their lamps dimmed, their expressions grave. "Are you certain this is wise, Poirot?" Hastings whispered nervously, glancing toward the door. "If we're found rummaging in the old man's private study." Poirot raised a finger for silence. "My dear Hastings, in the pursuit of truth, one must sometimes tread lightly upon the toes of discretion. Besides," he added, his voice dropping to a murmur, "Sir Adrian himself has invited us to open the mysteries of his death, posthumously, of course." He removed from his pocket the sealed envelope they had found earlier, bearing the ominous words, "To be opened only in the event of my death." Poirot broke the wax seal with meticulous care. Inside lay a single page of elegant handwriting, firm, deliberate, unmistakably that of the late Sir Adrian Langford. "Should anything befall me, the cause will not be accident nor despair. The truth of my peril lies behind the portrait of my wife. There you will find the record of my folly, and her vengeance." Hastings read the note twice, his brows knitting. Behind the portrait? What on earth could he mean? Poirot's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. "It is simple, mon ami. We shall look, with delicacy, of course." He moved toward the great oil painting that dominated the study's far wall, Lady Clarissa as a young woman, radiant in silver silk, her smile faint and inscrutable. The candlelight danced over her painted face, lending it a lifelike quality that unsettled even the brave Hastings. Poirot stood before it, studying every inch. "Observe, Hastings, the frame. Heavy gilt, yet one corner is less dusty. A recent touch, perhaps." He reached up and pressed gently. The frame yielded a fraction, and a faint click sounded. "Good heavens," Hastings murmured. "A hidden catch." With a smooth motion, Poirot swung the portrait outward on concealed hinges. Behind it, recessed into the wall, lay a shallow cavity, a secret compartment lined with wood and containing a small iron box. "Et voilà," said Poirot softly. "The heart of the matter." He opened the box with careful hands. Inside lay a sheaf of old letters tied with black ribbon, and beneath them, a slim journal bound in faded leather. The scent of age and dust rose faintly, mingled with something sharper, or a whisper of decay, perhaps. Poirot untied the ribbon, his expression unreadable as he examined the contents. The letters were written in a woman's hand, elegant, flowing, and filled with bitterness. "You lied to me, Adrian. You promised marriage and cast me aside. You made me an outcast while you courted another. You shall pay, not with blood perhaps, but with ruin. I will see your name crumble like the lies you built. When she stands beside you, she shall not know peace. Her beauty will fade in the shadow of my hatred. I will not rest. Hastings paled. Good Lord. These were from some former lover. Poirot nodded slowly. Yes, mon ami. The handwriting belongs to one Evelyn Gray, a singer, once celebrated, later disgraced. Sir Adrian was her patron. Their affair ended in scandal, it seems. And Lady Clarissa? She was the rival, Poirot said gravely. The new wife. Imagine, Hastings, a man haunted by the memory of a woman wronged. And now, perhaps, the shadow of her vengeance has returned to his house. He turned the final letter over and found a newspaper clipping tucked inside. Evelyn Gray found dead in boarding house, apparent suicide. Poirot's gaze darkened. Ah, but the dead do not always rest, Hastings. And sometimes their secrets live on through the living. At dawn, Poirot summoned Lady Clarissa to the study. She entered wearing a pale dressing gown, her face drawn but composed. When she saw the open portrait, her composure faltered. What is the meaning of this? She demanded sharply. How dare you? Poirot held up a hand. Lady Clarissa, forgive the intrusion. But it was necessary. Your late husband has left us a message, one that concerns you directly. He handed her the note and watched as she read it. Her lips trembled. He knew, then, she whispered. He knew all along. Knew what, madam? Poirot asked gently. That you were not who you seemed. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? Poirot's voice was calm, almost kind. You see, Lady Clarissa, the resemblance between yourself and the late Evelyn Gray is remarkable, the same eyes, the same line of jaw. Too remarkable to be coincidence. Tell me, what was your maiden name before you became Lady Clarissa Langford? She hesitated. Clarissa Vale. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. Indeed. Yet the records show that Clarissa Vale was born in Florence, and Evelyn Gray's sister was said to have fled England after the scandal. You came from Florence, did you not, madam? Her hands trembled. This is monstrous. No, said Poirot softly, it is human. You were Evelyn Gray's sister. You married the man who destroyed her. Perhaps you sought to reclaim what she lost, her dignity, her place in society, and perhaps, deep within, to avenge her death. Lady Clarissa sank into a chair, her colour fading. I loved him, she said hoarsely. At first, I loved him. But he never forgot her. Even after all those years, he kept her letters, her portrait hidden away. I begged him to destroy them. He refused. He said her ghost kept him company when I could not. Her voice cracked. He made me feel like a thief in my own house. Poirot regarded her with quiet pity. And so you plotted his end? She looked up sharply. No. I swear to you, I did not touch him. I wished him dead, yes, but thought is not deed. Poirot's eyes lingered on her face, searching, weighing. Then he said softly, we shall see, madam. The truth, it always rises, like cream to the top. Later that afternoon, Poirot walked alone through the gallery, his mind whirring. Every clue pointed one way, yet something resisted, a thread not yet tied. Edmund's anger, the doctor's secretive manner, Miss Dane's tremor of guilt, all pieces of a design not yet complete. He stopped before the portrait once more. Lady Clarissa's painted smile seemed different now, not serene, but mocking. Behind her painted eyes lay tragedy, deceit, and the echo of a woman long dead. Poirot whispered to himself, there is more. Tuges, there is more. As he turned to leave, his keen eyes caught something, a faint glimmer beneath the painting's edge. He leaned closer and found a small shard of glass embedded in the panel's groove, identical to the fragments found in Sir Adrian's throat. His eyes narrowed. "Mon Dieu," he breathed. The murderer was here. They hid something, or retrieved it. He pocketed the shard and stepped back. The motive, the means, and now the path. It leads not to love, but to fear. Someone feared what Sir Adrian knew. Hastings appeared at the door. "Poirot, they are all asking for you." The inspectors arrived from London. Poirot straightened his tie. "Excellent. Let him come. The little grey cells, they are almost ready to sing." As he left the study, the candlelight flickered behind him, and for a brief instant, it seemed that the painted eyes of Lady Clarissa followed him with sorrowful awareness. Chapter 6: The Tonic and the Truth. Inspector Graves from Scotland Yard arrived at Wynthorpe Grange just after noon, a tall, spare man with a face as thin as a knife and a manner of polite disbelief that Poirot found mildly irritating. "So this is your famous foreign detective, eh?" Graves said, glancing Poirot up and down. "Been told you've already turned the place inside out." Poirot bowed slightly. "Merely dusted, Inspector. It is astonishing how much dust one can find when one looks beneath the surface." Graves snorted. "We'll see about that. I like solid facts, not theories. Now, where's the body?" "In the chapel room," said Poirot. "Though I fear the true corpse of interest is not Sir Adrian, but the truth he carried." "Ah! Truths don't bleed," the inspector said grimly. "None," said Poirot, eyes twinkling. "But they can kill." By mid-afternoon, Poirot had gathered the household again: Lady Clarissa, Edmund Langford, Miss Violet Dane, and Dr. Carraway, this time under the official supervision of the inspector. The atmosphere was taut, every breath seemed to hang in the air. Poirot stood before the fireplace, immaculate as ever, his hands folded neatly before him. "Let us speak plainly," he began. "The death of Sir Adrian was not an act of impulse, nor of passion in the heat of the moment. It was deliberate, planned, and, how shall I say, executed with artistry." Edmund gave a sharp laugh. "You make it sound almost admirable." Poirot's gaze flicked to him. "Not admirable, monsieur. Merely precise. You, perhaps, could not claim the same precision in your own movements." "What's that supposed to mean?" Edmund demanded. "It means," said Poirot gently, "that the person who murdered Sir Adrian knew chemistry, the delicate balance of mixture and taste. They knew how to crush glass into powder fine enough to dissolve in liquid without immediate notice." He turned to Dr. Carraway. "A doctor, for instance, might know such a thing." The physician stiffened. "If you're implying—" Poirot lifted a hand. "I imply nothing, yet. But facts, they are like stubborn guests. They insist upon being heard." He held up a small vial. "This, Inspector Graves, is the residue from Lady Clarissa's tonic glass." Lady Clarissa gasped. "My tonic? What possible?" Poirot continued. "I took the liberty of examining it before breakfast. The liquid inside was faintly bitter, more so than usual. It contained traces of crushed silica. The same substance found in Sir Adrian's throat." There was a collective murmur. Poirot's eyes swept across the faces before him, calm, deliberate, deadly observant. "Someone," he said softly, "tampered with your tonic, madam, intending, perhaps, to make your death appear accidental. But fate, or confusion, intervened. The wrong glass was taken last night." Lady Clarissa stared at him, horror dawning. "You mean Adrian drank from my glass?" "Precisely," said Poirot. "He often did so, did he not? To taste it, to tease you, to prove it harmless." She nodded weakly. He did. It was a sort of joke between us. He said I worried too much about my nerves. Poirot inclined his head. Then, madam, you were the intended victim. A stunned silence followed. Even Inspector Graves seemed momentarily taken aback. Miss Dane, pale as parchment, whispered, then who could have wanted to kill her? Poirot turned slowly. Ah, mademoiselle, that is the question we must now answer. They adjourned to the drawing room. Poirot, seemingly unhurried, moved about the room as he spoke, straightening a cushion here, dusting a vase there, but his little grey cells were working furiously. Consider, he said. Sir Adrian was feared and hated. But Lady Clarissa, though proud, had no true enemies, save one who saw her as an obstacle. Edmund shifted uneasily. You can't mean me. Poirot smiled faintly. You? None. You are impulsive, monsieur, not calculating. No, the killer is one who moves in silence, who serves, who observes. His gaze fell upon Miss Violet Dane. She trembled. You can't think I adored Lady Clarissa? Poirot's voice was gentle. Adoration, mademoiselle, can sometimes twist itself into something darker. Resentment. Dependence. Fear. I swear I didn't. Calm yourself, Poirot said. We shall see. But first, one small test. He walked to the writing desk and produced 2 glasses. Lady Clarissa, pour a little of your tonic, if you please. With shaking hands, she obeyed. Poirot handed 1 glass to Violet. Taste it. I can't. Then you know its bitterness well, said Poirot softly. You mixed it often, I believe? You prepared it last night. Violet nodded miserably. Yes. But I didn't touch it after that. Poirot gave a faint smile. Ah, but you did. You replaced the powder given by Dr. Carraway, harmless salts, yes? With another substance. Crushed glass. The substitution required time and privacy. And you, mademoiselle, had both. The doctor rose angrily. That's nonsense. She wouldn't have known what. Ah, but she had help, Poirot interrupted. Someone with the knowledge, but lacking the courage to act directly. Someone who feared suspicion would fall upon himself. His gaze turned upon Dr. Carraway. The doctor's face went pale. You think I'd? Poirot raised the vial again. The powder was measured with scientific precision. The mixture exact. That, my dear doctor, is the mark of a professional mind, not a nervous companion. Graves stepped forward. Are you accusing the doctor? Poirot sighed. Patience, Inspector. I am arranging the pattern. He moved to the mantelpiece, his eyes glittering. Dr. Carraway loved Lady Clarissa. He hid it well, but the truth is visible to the trained eye. He despised Sir Adrian for his cruelty, for his jealousy, for the way he mocked the lady you adored. You could not strike directly, so you contrived a subtler plan. A tonic, one you alone controlled. You thought to rid her of her tormentor, then realized, too late, that Sir Adrian had drunk from the wrong glass. Carraway's shoulders sagged. You have no proof. Poirot smiled. On the contrary. Your medical bag, left unlocked, contained a pestle still coated with fine silica dust. And your fingerprints are upon Lady Clarissa's glass. I examined it before dawn. The doctor covered his face with a trembling hand. I didn't mean for him to die. It wasn't supposed to be him. Poirot's voice was soft. No murderer ever means for the innocent to suffer, yet they do. Lady Clarissa stared at him in disbelief. You did this for me." Carraway's voice broke. "I wanted to free you from him, from this cursed house. But I swear, Clarissa, I never wanted." Graves stepped forward grimly. "That's enough. Dr. Carraway, you'll come with me." As the inspector led him away, Poirot turned to the others. "It is over." "Almost." "Almost," Hastings repeated. "Surely you've solved it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Ah, my friend, the truth is like a mirror, reflect it too quickly, and you may not see the cracks. There is still one lie left in this house. One final deceit." He looked toward Lady Clarissa. Her face was pale, her eyes glistening. Poirot's tone was almost sorrowful. "You knew, did you not, that the doctor meant to kill your husband? You let him believe it would save you. But you, too, wished Sir Adrian dead." Her lips parted, a faint, bitter smile. "If I say yes, does it matter? He's gone. And I'm free." Poirot bowed his head. "No, madam. You are not free. Guilt is the longest sentence of all." That night, the rain began again, soft, relentless, cleansing. Poirot stood at the window, watching the ripples form in the dark. Hastings joined him quietly. "Do you ever tire of it, Poirot? Murder, lies, all this darkness." Poirot smiled faintly. "No, my friend. For where there is darkness, one must bring light. It is the duty of the little grey cells, and of the heart." He turned away from the window, adjusting his cuffs. "Tomorrow, we go to London. But tonight, we sleep. Even detectives must rest." Chapter 7, Echoes of the Past. Morning came shrouded in a thin, spectral fog. The moors beyond Wynthorpe Grange lay hidden beneath a white veil, and the house itself seemed to crouch beneath its weight, silent, watchful, unsettled. Dr. Carraway had been taken to London under Inspector Graves's custody at dawn. His confession had brought the case, in the eyes of the law, to a close. Yet for Hercule Poirot, it was far from complete. He sat in the study alone, the portrait of Lady Clarissa glimmering faintly in the grey light. Hastings entered quietly, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "You've not slept at all, have you?" he said. Poirot accepted the cup with a smile. "Non, mon ami. Sleep would not visit me while my mind whispers, something is amiss." Hastings sighed. "But Carraway confessed. The motive fits, the evidence fits, even Lady Clarissa herself admitted she knew what he planned. What more do you want?" Poirot stirred his coffee slowly. "Precision, Hastings. Harmony. The music of truth must resolve upon its final note, and this melody ends upon discord. Something does not fit." He rose and began pacing the room, his hands clasped behind him. "Consider, my friend, Dr. Carraway claims he mixed crushed glass into the tonic. Yet the analysis shows not glass dust, but ground quartz, coarser, irregular, and not from laboratory instruments. Such a substance could not have passed unnoticed in a drink." Hastings frowned. "Then the poison didn't come from him?" "Just so. He believed he was the author of the crime, but he was not. He was a pawn used with subtlety." "By whom?" Poirot's eyes flicked to the portrait. "By the true artist, Hastings. One who paints her vengeance not in colour, but in death. He called for Lady Clarissa that afternoon. She entered the study wearing black, her beauty more fragile than ever, yet there was a composure in her manner that did not escape Poirot's notice. "You wish to see me, Monsieur Poirot?" "Oh, madam. I wish to speak of the past, of Evelyn Grey." Her expression hardened. "I told you already, she was my sister. That is all." Poirot inclined his head. Your sister, whose death you have never spoken of, save with bitterness. Tell me, did you know she did not die by her own hand?" Clarissa went white. "What are you saying?" "I mean that Evelyn Grey did not commit suicide," Poirot said softly. "The report was convenient, yes, but false. I have read her letters again, and the handwriting changes abruptly in the final note, the one that claims despair. It was forged, clumsily, by a hand that sought to mimic her style." Clarissa's breath caught. "Forged? But by whom?" Poirot's eyes were steady. "By the man who ruined her, Sir Adrian Langford. He silenced the scandal by silencing her. She did not die of shame, madam. She was killed." Clarissa swayed, catching the back of a chair. "My God, then I have lived all these years beside her murderer." Poirot's tone softened. "Perhaps that is why you married him. Revenge disguised as affection. You meant to destroy him, not swiftly, but slowly, to make him feel what he had made your sister feel." Clarissa shook her head violently. "No. I loved him once, I swear I did. But he changed. He mocked me, tormented me with her memory. It was as though Evelyn's ghost lived between us. Every room, every word, every silence, she was there." Poirot nodded. "Oh, I. But ghosts do not kill, madam. People do. And last night, someone else avenged Evelyn's death more directly." She looked at him sharply. "You think I?" "I think," said Poirot quietly, "that the glass in Sir Adrian's throat did not come from your tonic at all. It came from the shattering of the decanter on the table, a decanter you broke deliberately, so that shards might mix with his drink when he refilled it. The doctor's confession gave you protection, a convenient veil. You let him believe himself the guilty one." Lady Clarissa's lips trembled. "You have no proof." Poirot smiled sadly. "Ah, but I do. You see, I found this, a sliver of glass bearing a trace of your perfume. It lodged beneath the decanter tray. You handled the pieces, madam. The scent betrayed you." She sank slowly into the chair. For a long moment, there was only the sound of her shallow breathing. "I thought," she said finally, her voice breaking, "that I could live with his cruelty. But when I found the truth about Evelyn, when I saw that he kept her portrait still, hidden here, behind mine, I felt something in me die. I did not plan it. It came upon me like a storm." He poured himself another drink, and I pushed the shards in. Her eyes glistened with tears. I watched him cough and struggle, and I felt nothing. Nothing but peace. Poirot regarded her with infinite sadness. "It is often so. The murder that gives peace, gives none." Later that day, Hastings found Poirot walking through the garden, his hands clasped behind his back. The fog had lifted, revealing a low sun burning through the mist. "So it was Lady Clarissa all along," Hastings said. "I can hardly believe it." Poirot nodded slowly. "She is a woman shaped by sorrow, moulded by vengeance. But she is not cruel by nature. She merely followed the path grief laid before her." Hastings sighed. "Will you tell Graves?" "I must. The law is blind, but it must still be obeyed. Yet I have asked that she be allowed to rest in her chambers until the evening. There will be no attempt to flee, she has already confessed, in her heart." They walked in silence for a while. Then Hastings said quietly, "And the doctor?" "He will be freed," said Poirot. "He acted foolishly, but not fatally. The guilt he bears will punish him enough." They paused by the lake, where the reflection of the house shimmered like broken glass. Poirot bent, plucked a single pebble, and cast it into the water. Rings spread outward, fading into calm. "Do you see, Hastings?" he murmured. Every act sends ripples through the world, some small, some vast. Sir Adrian's cruelty created waves that reached even into death. Hastings nodded slowly. You're right. The past doesn't stay buried, does it? None, Poirot said softly. It merely sleeps until someone wakes it. That evening, the house was still. Poirot sat once more in the study, alone. The portrait above the mantel seemed almost alive in the candlelight, Lady Clarissa's painted face serene now, her secrets laid bare. There came a soft knock at the door. It was Miss Dane, pale and trembling. Monsieur Poirot, she's gone. Gone. She took something from the doctor's bag, a vial. She said she wanted peace. Poirot rose swiftly, but he did not hurry. His steps were quiet, deliberate, inevitable. He climbed the staircase, opened the door to Lady Clarissa's room, and paused. She lay upon the bed, her hands folded, a faint smile upon her lips. The open window let in a cold breeze that stirred the curtains like the sigh of a departing spirit. The empty vial gleamed beside her. Poirot stood silently for a long time, then bowed his head. "Madam," he whispered, "you have followed your sister at last. May the heavens judge you with mercy." Hastings found him there moments later. "Poirot, you couldn't have known." Poirot turned to him, eyes weary but steady. "I knew, Hastings. But I did not stop her. There are moments when justice must yield to compassion. She was guilty, yes, but her punishment had already begun the night she lost her soul to vengeance." He brushed a speck of dust from his sleeve. "And so, my friend, the case is closed, though not solved in the eyes of man, perhaps only in the eyes of God." They left the room quietly. Behind them, the curtains fluttered once more, and from somewhere deep in the house, a clock struck the hour, slow, solemn, final. Chapter 8, The Final Deduction. The morning after Lady Clarissa's death dawned with the pale melancholy of a requiem. Mist drifted over the lawns of Wynthorpe Grange like a morning veil, softening the outline of the old house. Within its walls, silence reigned, a silence that spoke of endings. Hercule Poirot sat in the drawing-room, immaculate as ever, though his expression was grave. A tray of untouched breakfast rested beside him, steam fading from the teapot. Captain Hastings entered quietly, his face drawn. "They've taken her away," he said softly. "Inspector Graves has gone too. He left a message, said you were right, as always." Poirot inclined his head. "It gives me no pleasure to be right in such a matter, mon ami. The truth, when it concerns the ruin of a soul, is seldom sweet." He rose and walked to the window, gazing out upon the misty garden. Lady Clarissa was no ordinary criminal, Hastings. She was a woman divided between love and vengeance, guilt and grief. The tragedy began long before Sir Adrian died. Hastings sat opposite him. "You mean Evelyn Grey?" "Just so," Poirot said, turning back to him. "Evelyn was the catalyst. She loved Sir Adrian, perhaps foolishly, but with sincerity. When he cast her aside, her despair consumed her. Clarissa, devoted to her sister, could not forgive that betrayal. The seeds of revenge were planted the day Evelyn died." Hastings nodded slowly. "And Clarissa's marriage to Sir Adrian, that was part of her plan all along." Poirot smiled faintly. "At first, I think not. She married him with the noble dream of redeeming what he had destroyed. But he did not change. The past haunted them both. It grew into poison, stronger than any in a glass." He walked toward the mantel, where the portrait of Lady Clarissa still hung, half-shadowed by the flickering fire. When she discovered the truth, that Evelyn had been murdered, not self-slain, something within her broke. She resolved to deliver justice in her own way. But she was too clever, too proud, to act openly. She waited, and when Dr. Carraway's misguided experiment offered opportunity, she seized it. Hastings frowned. But Poirot, how could she have been certain he would confess? She could not, Poirot replied. But she understood guilt, mon ami. She saw it in the doctor's eyes long before he spoke of it. He was weak, a man who admired her beauty, perhaps even loved her from afar. She knew he would take the blame if given the chance to protect her. Such is the vanity of devotion. He paused, then added quietly, when she pushed those shards into the decanter, she also placed one fragment beneath the tray. I found it, faintly scented with her perfume. That, Hastings, was the whisper of the truth. Hastings looked at him in wonder. I say, Poirot, how do you notice such things? Poirot smiled modestly. Because, mon ami, order and method, they are the twin gods of the detective. The smallest thing, a whiff of scent, a misaligned glass, it is these that speak when words deceive. He sipped his cold tea, then set it down with a sigh. But there is something beyond deduction here, Hastings, something deeper. Lady Clarissa's act was not born of greed or ambition. It was the terrible flowering of a grief unhealed. Hastings was silent for a long moment. Do you think she was wicked, Poirot? Poirot shook his head. No, my friend. Wickedness is deliberate, cold, self-serving. Clarissa's crime was passionate, born from despair. She avenged her sister and punished herself in one stroke. There is tragedy, yes, but wickedness, none. Later that day, Inspector Graves returned briefly to the Grange. His usual brisk manner was subdued. We finished up, Monsieur Poirot, he said. Dr. Carraway's to be released immediately. Poor devil's half-mad with guilt. As for Lady Clarissa, well, the coroner will call it suicide, I expect. Pity. She was a fine woman once. Poirot inclined his head gravely. OUI, Inspector. But grief spares no one, however fine. Graves hesitated. You know, I can't help thinking, you could have stopped her. You saw it coming, didn't you? Poirot met his eyes, his own expression calm. I did. But sometimes, monsieur, the little grey cells must bow before the human heart. I judged that she had suffered enough. Justice of the mind is one thing, justice of the soul, another. Graves regarded him for a moment, then nodded slowly. I suppose you're right. He turned toward the door. You're a strange man, Monsieur Poirot. You chase truth, yet sometimes you let it rest. Poirot smiled gently. Because, mon ami, truth, when it is cruel, must sometimes be permitted to sleep. That evening, the house stood nearly empty. Servants moved softly through the corridors, packing trunks and closing shutters. Poirot and Hastings took one final walk through the gardens before their departure. The fog had lifted, and the autumn sun shone weakly on the still pond. Leaves floated upon its surface like fragments of gold. Poirot paused at the edge, gazing into the water where once the reflection of the house had trembled like broken glass. Do you remember what I said, Hastings? He murmured. About the ripples upon the water? Each act sends them outward, and though they fade, they never truly vanish. Yes, Hastings said softly. You were right. It's strange, all this tragedy began with one cruel act years ago, and it's taken 2 more lives to close the circle. Poirot nodded. Evil, my friend, is often circular, it returns to its source. But even in tragedy, there can be order. Evelyn, Clarissa, Adrian, or their stories are finished now. The house, too, will sleep. They turned back toward the drive, where their car awaited. A few workers moved about, covering statues and drawing in garden benches. The Grange was already slipping into memory, a relic of sorrow preserved in silence. At the gates, Hastings looked back once more. "You know, Poirot, I never thought of you as sentimental. But this case, it's affected you." Poirot smiled faintly. "Ah, mon ami, even the most logical of men has a heart. To see such beauty wasted by pain, it is enough to wound the vanity of even Hercule Poirot." Hastings chuckled softly, though his eyes were troubled. "And yet you solved it." "You always do." Poirot tapped his temple lightly. "The little grey cells, Hastings, they permit no rest. But today, perhaps, they mourn a little." He opened the car door, then paused. "You know, I once told a criminal that the truth, like a seed, must grow, that sooner or later, it breaks the earth. At Wynthorpe Grange, that seed grew into sorrow. But perhaps now, with all secrets laid bare, peace may bloom at last." As the car rolled down the long drive, the mist closed behind them. From the upper window, the wind stirred the curtains of Lady Clarissa's room, a final sigh, a farewell. Poirot sat back, adjusting his hat, and closed his eyes. "It is done, Hastings," he murmured. "The ghosts of Wynthorpe sleep, and Hercule Poirot may rest." Hastings looked out across the fading moorland. "Until the next case, eh?" Poirot smiled without opening his eyes. "Mais oui, until the next case." The car disappeared into the mist, leaving Wynthorpe Grange in silence once more, a house emptied of voices, but filled forever with the echoes of love, loss, and the relentless pursuit of truth.